Welcome into Minnesota Vikings Now. I am Tom Downey. We'll get to some Vikings trade rumors and targets and ideas here in a minute. But first, as we approach the just days away now, 2022 NFL trade deadline, what do you believe is the Vikings' biggest need? You can type in 1 for cornerback, 2 for defensive line, 3 for tight end, 4 for linebacker, or you can comment other for a different position. Let me know what that is in the comments right now. This is Minnesota Vikings Now, and the trade deadline, always too early in the calendar, by the way. Do better, NFL, is just around the corner, so we're going to talk trade rumors because we don't have that many more chances to do so here. Couple different trade targets, some from major outlets, some from us, and even one from a commenter. Kyle Rudolph is first up here, the Minnesota man himself, I'll still call him Vikings legend forever there. Rudolph is not playing that much in Tampa on the one-year deal. I think Rudolph could make some sense as a red zone threat, where, even at the end of his career with Minnesota, we saw how impactful he could still be in that particular role, but the Bucs have gone a bit younger at the tight end spot. Minnesota had carried 4 tight ends earlier this year, but it's Irv Smith, Johnny Munt, Ben Ellefson. I think Munt and Ellefson are fine as blockers. Irv Smith is, of course, still your number 1 tight end. Rudolph would give you a potential another option if you want to be some more creative red zone looks at the tight end position. The idea, and producer Patrick loved it so much he just wanted to put it in the show, was from Eric Horn. Vikings get Kyle Rudolph, Bucs then get Chris Reed. Since Reed's not playing for Minnesota, Tampa needs offensive linemen. It's actually not the worst trade idea we've seen in the past, and we've seen some bad ones, trust me. So would you make this deal? Would you make that trade for Kyle Rudolph? A, for you to accept it, or D, for you would decline? Head down to the comments section, which the ad break happens to play here on YouTube, and sound off. A for accept, D for decline. Let's talk corners. We've actually got a couple different names. We begin with Sidney Jones, the Seattle Seahawks cornerback. ESPN has actually linked Minnesota as a potential trade fit for Sidney Jones, a rather lengthy piece from Bill Barnwell, several names of which we'll talk about on today's show. Tariq Woolen, Mike Jackson, and Kobe Bryant as the nickel have emerged as the go-to guys for Seattle. Sidney Jones, who did play decently well when he made his trip to his third team, Eagles, Jags, then Seattle, last year. Played decently well, but kind of fell out of favor in the end for the Seahawks defensive coaching staff there. From a buy low standpoint, Jones will not cost you much of anything. We're talking maybe a third or maybe a mid to late day 3 pick. I think 5th at best is what you'd get for him, and it's probably more like a 6th or a 7th. Maybe a future draft pick conditions-wise, playing time, etc. there. And I think that could make sense for Minnesota. I do wonder this, though. Is Minnesota in a spot where a corner is what they need, or do they need a really good corner between Patrick Peterson, Cam Dantzler, Andrew Booth, and Caleb Evans long-term too? I don't think it's like, we just got to get somebody. It's not like a body need. It's an impact need. I don't know if Sidney Jones fills that, but there are not that many good corners on the trade block, or any corners really, so he's one that we want to mention. Let's go to number 3, Jerry Jeudy, the Broncos wide receiver, who I do think could be shopped by Denver. In fact, I think he will be shopped. They're probably not going to pick up his 5th-year option. He's been a huge disappointment in Denver, and Denver needs to sell because they're bad, and that's an embarrassment for Nathaniel Can't-Hackett and Mr. Limited Russell Wilson himself and Mr. Heine guy. What a joke. Now, receiver is not a huge need with Jefferson, Thielen right now. But imagine Jerry Jeudy now, the former first-round pick, getting some slot reps, getting some outside receiver reps just like the rest of that receiving core. I like KJ Osborne a lot. Don't get me wrong there. But you plug Jeudy in, make a strength even stronger. I don't mind teams doing that, especially with how much Kevin O'Connell does like to pass the football. But Jeudy has been a disappointment so far in his NFL career. 386 yards, 2 touchdowns, 24 catches there. Has had drop seeds in the past, but it is better than Adam Thielen, who I don't think will be on this team next year. I think there's a very early Let me clarify. There's a very real chance he's not on this team next year. There's always contract restructures, re-signings, etc. But Thielen is not nearly as impactful as what he was. Now, Denver's played an extra game. Keep that in mind from the numbers standpoint, so it's a bit deceptive. But if you add Jeudy as receiver 3 this year, what if he's your 2 next year alongside Justin Jefferson? You still have KJ Osborne in that role. I think that's a fun idea for Minnesota to at least consider exploring, and good GMs, who I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is, are at least calling teams, gauging the price of various players, if not to go trade for them, to know what their own guys could roughly be valued at if they have to trade them now or in the offseason or whatever. Do you want to trade for a wide receiver? Sound off Y or N in the comment section. Today's show is made possible by our sportsbook partner, BetUS. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code CHAT125 for a 125% deposit bonus. $100 down minimum. Get you the bonus so you can literally play with house money. You can put $5 down on Minnesota to beat or cover the spread against the Cardinals this week, who they're up and down. I don't believe in Arizona all that much, but the NFL's been weird this year. I think 3.5 is a fairly decent spread. I like Minnesota, though. Bet me, fade me, whatever it is. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code CHAT125. Number 4, Greedy Williams, the Browns corner who is allegedly being shopped by Cleveland, and they do stand out as potential sellers this year. Jeremy Fowler says the Browns, or many teams have contacted the Browns about a potential trade for Williams, the former 2019 second-round draft pick, who has not played very much this year. 2 games, has not looked good at all. There's been some real issues in coverage this year in a very small sample size. He's flashed before. I think it's a change of scenery type of time. I don't think he'd be that expensive. I think day 3 pick is A, the asking price, and fair value. I don't want to move a 4th, but a 5th for Greedy Williams, I am very intrigued by, although I always go back to this mindset. Well, if I want to give up that, I would bet there'd be somebody else who wants to give it up too, so you always got to keep that stuff in mind. But I think a day 3 pick would be fair for Greedy. The point I keep coming back to, though, is Sidney Jones, Greedy Williams. Do those guys really move the needle enough for you in upgrading your cornerback room? I'm not so sure. Our next guy, however, might. That's number 5, Stefan Gilmore, the Colts corner. They're bad. They just benched Matt Ryan. I think there's a very real chance they are big-time sellers this year at the NFL trade deadline because they're kind of a dumpster fire with You're going to play Sam Ellinger. Come on, guys. Now, figuring out the money is a factor here as well. Stephon Gilmore is in the first year of a 2-year, $20 million contract. Now, the base salary this year is $5.51 million. Not that much in roster bonuses. $8 million next year. You'd owe the prorated amount of that $5.51 million. Roughly half is the fast and loose money to make it play with from that standpoint. So, $2.7 million for the rest of the year. Not that bad. It's affordable, but you are very light on cap space. So you'd have to make some adjustments somewhere to get Gilmore in the fold. Maybe you would bring his base salary down to the minimum and then eat a little bit of dead money next year if you chose to cut him, which is, I think, palatable for Minnesota. So you could make it work if you want to. Now, so far this year for Stephon Gilmore, the 1 interception, decent coverage rates, not that many yards allowed. Gilmore is no longer Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore. That's just not who he is. And frankly, Isaiah Rodgers for the Colts has been the number 1 corner. As weird as that is, that's the reality for Indy. He's been awesome for them, late round pick out of Oregon State. But Gilmore's the big name. He'd be, I think, an upgrade over all your other corners right now, and it would at least give you another flex piece on defense in terms of corners to make some big-time impact. Make sure you guys are subscribed so you never miss out on any Vikings news, rumors, game recaps, whatever it is, off-season, preseason, regular season, and playoffs this year too. Hit that big red button, subscribe at youtube.com/Vikings today. Next up, how about trading Alexander Madison? ESPN mentioned Madison could be dealt at the deadline, maybe to get a draft, maybe to get a player as well. The Vikings do have some depth at running back. They likely won't re-sign him after the season, but they could use him to get pieces at other key positions, whether it's Go get a corner. Go get offensive lineman if you want depth there, because teams always want offensive line depth, right? Go get receiver help, defensive help across the board. I would still be surprised if Madison ends up getting dealt, but it does make sense. You can add a player if you can get a valuable asset back for Madison, that's intriguing. So I say doubtful, but never say never with the NFL trade deadline just days away.